Hello and welcome to today's devotional. So today I want to be reading from the book of 1 Samuel, jumping in at chapter 17, and I'm loving this book at the moment because I'm learning so much. And I'm jumping in where we've already heard that David has been anointed as king, and at this moment in time we've heard that Goliath is coming along and he's giving it the large and shouting his mouth off to all the people of Israel. And it says that all the men of Israel were dreadfully scared and afraid, and they fled from him, which I don't blame them, mate. Like, Goliath was pretty big, so I can understand the fear. And at this moment, Jesse, which is David's dad, has told David to go down and meet his brothers. And his brothers were at battle with Saul, and David has left his sheep with the sheepkeeper and come down to meet his brothers. And just at that specific moment, David overhears Goliath shouting his mouth off. And that's where we're jumping in today. We're jumping in at verse 26, where it says, David spoke to the men around him and was like, 1, who is this guy? 2, what's going to happen to the guy who kills this guy? Because this idiot, this uncircumcised Philistine is shouting his mouth off and he's defying the armies of the living God. So all the men there decide to tell David, like, listen, the guy who defeats this Philistine is gonna, 1, have exemption from taxes, 2, will get the king's daughter's hand in marriage, and 3, get riches. Well, that's a really pretty decent deal. So David's asking all this, he's inquiring all the men, and just at that moment his brother overhears and gets really angry, and was just starts coming up to David and starts just calling David out. And he's just like, listen, why are you here, mate? Where have you left your little sheep that you look after in the wilderness? And furthermore, I know your heart. I know that you're not here for any other reason, but because you want to see a bit of the drama and your heart's proud anyway. So David's brother Eliab's kind of a bit horrible to him, to be honest. He's mugging him off a little bit. And then David, as a beautiful, 15-year-old teenager, would respond. He was just like, what have I done now? I'm here for a good reason. Stop, mugging me off. He doesn't actually say that, but that's how I can imagine it went down. David's asking, listen, what have I done now? I ain't even done nothing wrong. And you're just you're picking on me for no reason. So then David continued to ask. He didn't even care. He's like, nah, I'm just going to continue to ask. It says, David continued to say the same thing, and these people answered him in the same way. Funny that, actually. And then verse 31. Now when the words which David spoke were heard, they were reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. Then David said to Saul, listen, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And then obviously you know the story that he went and fought Goliath, and obviously won, and all that jazz. But before we even get to that point, from that text, that piece of text, I really want to draw some conclusions and ask some questions about this. So first of all, I love it how we see David was in the right place at the right time. David's dad Jesse told him to go down and meet his brothers, and just at that point, he heard Goliath shouting out. And the second point, David began to think about what it would be like if this giant in his life would be removed. He started thinking about it, he started inquiring about it, he started imagining it. Next, he was belittled by his brother. And actually, that could have been a major distraction to him. He belittled him. It's like, where's your little sheep that, the few sheep that you look after? You're not meant to be here. What are you doing here? You don't belong. It could have distracted David, but it didn't. And then David dared to believe to something, and he dared to speak up again about it. It says in the text that all the men of Israel were scared. They didn't do anything. They just fled. And then again, the next point, David's words were heard. This 15-year-old boy is speaking about potentially removing this giant that no one else has even attempted to do, and that is now reported to Saul. It's crazy. David's words were heard. And then lastly, it was David's decision to fight Goliath. It didn't say he got a prophetic word from God, or there's writing on the wall, or blah blah blah. David, it said, according to the text, it just says that it come from David's mouth, I'll go and fight him. So from this, I just really want to draw some questions and reflections of what you can think about and which I've been thinking about after reading this. So first of all, asking and praying to God, saying, Lord, let me be in the right place and position for where you want me to be next. If David hadn't been in that place at that time to hear Goliath shouting out his mouth, would he have, would he have been able to go on to fight Goliath, normally win, and then like all these things would spiral? I don't know. But that's what I've been praying. Lord, position me in the right place for where you want me for my next move. Second, Lord, help me to see and imagine what it would be like if this giant would be removed from my life. Whatever that giant is, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in the life of your community, I start to think, what would life be like if there was no more knife crime in Havering? If there was no more, cancer, if there was, if actually people loved each other, in this town, in Havering. Next, ask yourself, is there anything that's trying to distract me? It could be negative criticism. It could be someone trying to belittle you, trying to speak out against you. Is there anything that could potentially try to distract you? And if it is, recognize it, remove it. You don't need it. Like David, he didn't care. He just carried on. He just was like, listen, I'm here for a reason, so and he carried on asking the same question like that he was asking before. And imagine what your words would be like if they were heard by the king. Well, actually, they're heard by God. David started speaking about this, and obviously the king Saul at the time, it got reported to him, and then Saul invited him into his office. Imagine what your words would be like if they were heard by the king, which they are. And then lastly, is there a decision that I need to make? Like David made the decision to speak out against Goliath and offer to fight him. Is there a decision that you need to make in your life? Is there something that you need to speak out against, that you need to step up and do? That, like David did. So I just want to leave you with those words. And I really encourage you to think and to pray, to put these into your, kind of prayer time and reflection time, and just see what the Lord reveals to you through this. I hope you're having a really amazing day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.